Lesson 2.2, Characteristics of Quadratic Functions. How do you find the max and min of a quadratic function? How do you graph using intercepts? So first we need to discuss what is the vertex form of a quadratic function. If you remember from lesson 2.1, quadratic functions vertex form is f of x equals the a, which tells us if we have any vertical stretches or shrinks, and if we are facing upward or downward. We have x minus the h, and the h tells us the x value of our vertex. It needs to be squared, because then it's actually quadratic. And you are adding the k, and the k tells us the y value of the vertex. So our vertex is the coordinate point, hk. And our axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is the line that goes straight through the vertex and tells us which each half is. So this is the line x equals the h. So we are going to pretend that this is Algebra 1. And how would we have been asked to graph this vertex form using Algebra 1? The very first thing we would have been asked to do is to find the axis of symmetry. To find the axis of symmetry, we use the equation x equals h. So we need to identify the h. So coming up here, I know my h is supposed to be inside my parentheses, but my parenthesis is supposed to say x minus something. What would I have subtracted to where it would have simplified to be a plus 3? I would have subtracted a negative 3 because the minus and negative would have simplified to plus. So my h is a negative 3. So x is going to be a negative 3. So if this were in Algebra 1, this would have been the very first step. You would have found your axis of symmetry. And so now I'm going to come and draw my axis of symmetry. X equals negative 3 is right here. So here is me drawing my axis of symmetry. This is the mirror line. After the axis of symmetry, we're then told to find our vertex. So graphing my vertex, it's supposed to be the coordinate point hk. I already found the h, so I know that I'm at negative 3. I need to find the k. The k is the number that you were adding out here on the outside. I'm adding a 4. So my vertex is on the axis of symmetry, and it's at the corner point negative 3, 4. So here's my vertex. That would be step 2. Remember, we're solving all of this pretending we're back in Algebra 1. So after step 2, we would have had to come over and do step 3. Step 3 in Algebra 1 told us that we needed to find just one more point, because we need to be able to figure out where does our u go. In Algebra 1, we don't know the vertex form movements. So in Algebra 1, we would have done an xy table. I know that my vertex is right here at the coordinate point negative 3, 4. If I'm looking at my x values, if I've already found negative 3, the next closest one would have been negative 2. The next closest one would have been negative 1. So I need to find the y values. So you are putting negative 2 into this formula, and you would have found it to be 2. Negative 1, you would have put it into the formula, and you would have found it to be negative 4. So negative 2, 2 is my next point. Negative 2, 2 would have lived right here. He is 1 away from the axis of symmetry, which means he has a partner who is also 1 away from the axis of symmetry. The next point is negative 1, negative 4. Negative 1, negative 4 is way down here. He is 2 away from the axis of symmetry, so his partner is also 2 away from the axis of symmetry. So if I connect these, this is my U shape. This is us using all of our Algebra 1 skills. This is how we learned to graph it in Algebra 1. Now we're being asked to answer a few questions. Our vertex. We identified our vertex to be this coordinate point right here. He was the coordinate point negative 3, 4. Our axis of symmetry is this orange line right here. And this is always an x equals line because it cut the x-axis. It's x equals negative 3. My max or my min, that is going to be talking about this vertex. Is this vertex the highest or the lowest that my parabola, my u, goes? This is the highest it goes, so I know that I have a max. And you're going to want to tell me how high did it go. I can see that the highest it went was right here at 4. So my max is going to be at 4. Domain. I see that I'm always going to go to the right because it's going to keep going, keep going, keep going. It's going to always go to the left, keep going, keep going, keep going. So my domain is going to be all real numbers. My range tells me where on the y-axis I could find my parabola. That also works with our vertex and our max. So my y's are always in relation to the 4, the max, and is my u above it or is my u below it? My u is below it. You will notice that the max is always going to be working with our range. They're going to be the same exact number because they're always in relation to how far, where up and down my vertex is. So we have another practice problem. I know that this is going to be in vertex form. And how I know that this is in vertex form is because I have a parenthesis to the second power. If you do not see a parenthesis to the second power, then it's not in vertex form. You're going to have to graph it a different way. So I need to graph this problem. It says it's Algebra 1 practice review. So we need to graph this using our Algebra 1 skills and how they taught us in Algebra 1. So step 1 in Algebra 1 was always to identify our axis of symmetry. My axis of symmetry tells me that x is supposed to equal h, so I need to find the h. The h is always inside of the parenthesis. So x minus something gave me a plus 1. X minus a negative 1 gave me the plus 1 when they simplify the minus the negative. So I can see that my h right here is a negative 1. So x equals negative 1 is my axis of symmetry. So I'm going to use my color pencil. I'm going to find where x is negative 1, and this is my axis of symmetry. It is my mirror line. This helps me find the partners when I draw my parabola. So I have my axis of symmetry. So my axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. Next, we're asked to find our vertex. The vertex we know is the coordinate point hk. I already found my h. It's a negative 1. Now I just need to find my k. The k is supposed to be the number that you are adding out here. I see no number being added, so my k is going to be a 0. So my vertex is the coordinate point negative 1, 0, which lands right here. The next step in Algebra 1 was to make the xy table to find the other points. We always start at our vertex. Here's negative 1, 0. So the next in the table over would have been 0. Next in the table over would have been 1. So I am at 0. If I plug 0 into this equation, I would have gotten negative 3. So here is 0 and negative 3. He is 1 away from the axis of symmetry, which means his partner is also 1 away from the axis of symmetry. If I plug 1 into this equation, I get negative 12, which is off my chart. So here is my parabola. Try and make them as curved as possible. I understand it's difficult sometimes. Now I need to find out if I have a max or a min. This is where my vertex is. Is this the highest or is this the lowest that my parabola will go? I will go up, turn around, and go back down. So this is the highest that my u will ever go. So this is going to be a max. And he's a max at what? The highest it went was at 0. So I went as high as 0. Remembering that this green line also helped me with my range. So I'm looking at my y's in relation to that 0, and the range is telling me where my u lives. Do I live above or do I live below? I see my parabola lives below, so I need the below symbol, which is less than or equal to. Last is your domain. I see that I go forever into the left and forever to the right. There is no line like this that I could draw over on the x's. So I know my domain is all real numbers. We have one last problem on the page. This problem is independent practice for you.